If you were to choose 3 words that sum up social media, what would they be?
Unnecessarily, tragically harmful.
After 20 years of unfettered growth, a realisation is dawning about the true cost of social media.
I don't think Instagram wants to kill kids. I think Instagram wants to make a ton of money, and they don't care if they happen to kill some kids along the way.
This social experiment has had the most profound consequences for young people.
We let a stranger into our house every night that does the most horrific things and can manipulate a child's mind.
This is an urgent crisis. Millions of teens are having their mental health compromised. I think Mark is responsible for what happened to these kids.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
Fix it. Your algorithms are targeting the mentally unwell and children.
Those algorithms are also spreading disinformation. As the world focuses on US politics, democracy is under threat. Insiders are sounding the alarm.
It's a feeling like you are in a car hurtling toward a brick wall or some danger that you know is coming.
Online anger is spilling onto the streets.
These were our first social media riots.
Inside these vast, soulless business parks of Silicon Valley, they're shaping the way the rest of us live. But it's not all likes and cat videos. Around the world, momentum is building to finally hold social media companies to account. In this episode of Four Corners, we speak to some of the key players in the fight to make that happen. It's early morning at a mosque in the Merseyside town of Southport in England's northwest.
Don't attack other people for no reason. Don't harm the community that you're living in. Don't harm.
We've come to visit this community as it recovers from a frightening attack. In July, Southport Imam Ibrahim Hussein was here with 7 other worshippers when a mob descended.
We are no match to them. We're feeling intimidated, frightened. And then, of course, they got vocal, they got louder.
The Imam and his men barricaded themselves inside.
We went to watch the CCTV, and then very soon we discovered that the smoke and the fire is being thrown at the window, and all the smoke is coming inside. If we didn't die in the hands of the mob, we're definitely going to suffocate with the smoke. There is young lads that were here that have got young families, and they're thinking they're not going to see them again.
They thought they were going to die?
Yeah.
Outside, the chaos escalated.
It looks like we were in a war zone.
Because of a lie on social media?
Because of a lie.
Is social media to blame for what happened at your mosque?
Most definitely.
The attack on the Southport Mosque was the culmination of a concerted disinformation campaign. It began after 3 little girls were stabbed in Southport at a Taylor Swift dance class.
3 children who were just dancing, and now they're gone.
The Home Secretary had earlier warned about disinformation linked to the attack.
Social media didn't create the racial tensions in Britain, but it's given extremists a powerful tool to spread hate. Nazir Afzal is a former chief prosecutor for North West England. He brought to justice the perpetrators of violent protests in the past, but he's seen nothing like this.
There was an enormous amount of comment on social media as to the identification of the perpetrator. This person's a Muslim, this person's an asylum seeker, language of that nature, which was wrong in all respects. You know, disinformation is not freedom of speech, it's lying, and openly lying in order to encourage people to do something nefarious.
In fact, the alleged perpetrator, who was ultimately arrested, was born in Britain to a Christian family.
Everybody forgot 3 little girls that had been murdered. You know, it really shocks me. That was their motivation, allegedly, but they didn't care. It literally was simply an attack on black and brown people in this country because they are black and brown.
What I do know is something is going horribly wrong in our once beautiful country.
It was the worst civil unrest in the UK in more than a decade.
You don't protect our children, come against us. We're coming for your families on your street.
These were our first social media riots. People were using social media to create fear.
The disinformation about the attacker's identity had spread after a series of posts on X, formerly known as Twitter. The posts were amplified by notorious influencers linked to the far right, people like Andrew Tate.
So an undocumented migrant decided to go into a Taylor Swift dance class today. That's right, somebody arrived in the UK on a boat.
Shadowy extremist accounts on Telegram and others on X with hundreds of thousands of followers pushed the narrative further. Ex-owner Elon Musk weighed in, responding directly to the anti-immigration account Europe Invasion.
The idea that Musk would allow an account like that on the platform is a major problem in and of itself. Musk, the owner of the platform, was amplifying a voice that was an extremely dangerous voice that contributed to the violence we saw in the streets over the coming days. Things really just started in Southport, but
Joe Mulhall monitors the extreme right for anti-racism advocacy group Hope Not Hate.
So you'd get some people putting it on X like this, but you'd also get live streaming happening on TikTok.
He was aghast to see Elon Musk post during the riots to his more than 200 million followers that civil war is inevitable.
What happened in the days following that attack in Southport had disastrous effects on our streets and in our communities. And it wasn't Musk putting his hands up and saying this is free speech. He was engaging in it himself. Some of the biggest players spreading misinformation, disinformation and hatred in the period running up to and during the riots were individuals that had previously been removed from Twitter, but Elon Musk allowed back onto the platform.
As a social media riot, we're going to have to look back at this and see what we can learn from this. Platforms themselves, social media platforms, have a responsibility, and we didn't see it being exercised.
You say these were the first social media riots. Will they be the last?
I have no doubt that there will be other social media riots.
To understand why Britain erupted in this way, it's instructive to meet a far-right figure like Patriotic Alternative's Mark Collett. Mr. Collett uses social media to disseminate his xenophobic agenda. His anti-immigration rhetoric has seen him banned from Facebook and X, but he supports where Elon Musk is taking social media.
I think social media is important. It does give you a greater reach, and since Elon Musk has taken over on Twitter, there have been smaller accounts that have grown very large, and they are saying things that under the old Twitter establishment they wouldn't have been allowed to say. And I think that's something that the British government is very scared about, because they want to do something to curtail Elon Musk's drive for free speech.
As the Southport riots broke out, Mark Collett took to social media. He linked the attacks on the little girls to immigration, telling his followers the migrant murderer who attacked British children with a knife will now be protected. That was a false claim. He also wrote, "We, the white British, are the victims of an anti-white, multicultural tyranny."
So you stand by those words?
Well, of course. I mean, I'm not blaming the immigrant community here. People are saying we've had enough, we've had enough, we've had enough.
Another thing that you've said in the past is diversity is a hate crime against white people.
Did I specifically say that?
You were quoted as saying that, do you? But you
I mean, it's a reasonable quote. I mean, I'll take it if you want. Diversity is something that is bad for white people, because every time somebody says this has become more diverse, it means fewer white people.
This is a predominantly white country with predominantly white institutions, with enormous amounts of institutional racism in our system. So the idea that somehow this is against him and his people is it's just nonsense.
At Southport, there was someone there wearing a T-shirt that was very clearly linked to Patriotic Alternative, so that's a dead giveaway.
Hope Not Hate discovered Patriotic Alternative figures attended the Southport riots.
So we've proved by analysing footage of the riots that individuals linked to Patriotic Alternative that have been active with Patriotic Alternative, engaged in the violence on those days, that were present at those riots. And that comes as no surprise.
Mark Collett paints himself as an advocate for, as he puts it, the Indigenous white people of Britain. But his views are far more sinister.
So you still think that Hitler wasn't such a bad guy?
I don't know him, I never met him, so I don't have first-hand experience.
He did order the extermination of 6 million Jews.
Did he?
You don't think he did?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's an interesting question to ask.
Holocaust denial is not just historically inaccurate, it's deeply hurtful. We've grappled with whether to include these comments at all. Joe Mulhall believes it's important to never sanitise the darkest beliefs of these far-right figures.
Mark Collett is a long-standing Holocaust denier. He has done for many years. He's an extraordinarily extreme figure. He might present himself sometimes as a moderate figure, but there is so much evidence about just how extreme and how pro-Nazi he actually is.
This anti-immigration rhetoric has had serious consequences for families like Naveed Mukhtar's.
I never imagined in my life that that day will come when I will have to leave my home.
Mr Mukhtar is a migration lawyer and he runs his business out of his family home. During the riots, his business was named on a list shared on the social media platform Telegram, forcing the family to leave their home.
Those racist people.
What do you know about racism?
That then they're not respecting other people's religions and faiths.
And how do you feel about that?
Offended and angry.
Do you feel safe when you go outside? Are you able to go outside now?
Not much. I still have the fear that something is going to happen because these people can just do anything. They have so many people with them.
The family lives in Stoke-on-Trent, just over an hour from Southport. Mr Mukhtar says since the riots, the already simmering racial tensions in this area have worsened.
Since these riots started in the country, racism has increased multiple times. We can't leave our home thinking that we are safe, and I reported to the police many times and to the local city council, but unfortunately haven't received any help at all. My children cannot go and play in the street anymore. we are just living in a cage. That hate which has been spread in the whole country is affecting families like us who just want to work.
What would you say to social media proprietors, you know, the likes of Elon Musk?
If you want to make profits, take more responsibility.
The social media are fundamentally culpable for what's happening. These are vast international companies with huge resources, and as yet, they refuse to, or they are doing it too slowly, to deal with the issues on these platforms that are having real-world effects on people on our streets.
Andrew Kong saw this up close when he worked as a planning analyst for the social media company Tik Tok.
So I've seen so many videos, people dying, people, committing suicide, people getting beheaded on a platform that is targeted toward younger generation and younger people. It's horrible.
We are far too soft.
TikTok says it has strict controls for those under 18. We set up an account for an adult male TikTok user and entered the search term Immigration UK to see where the algorithm took us. Within minutes, the suggested content turned xenophobic and dark.
Do Muslims have to pay council tax?
Congress are going to be Muslims.
Soon England won't be England, it'll be Islam.
The more time you spend on it, you're going to go down further into the rabbit hole. That's sort of kind of like how they keep you addicted, entertained.
Thousands of kilometres across the North Atlantic, the United States is on the cusp of an election, where social media is more pivotal than ever before.
One of the biggest challenges that I face is mis and disinformation.
Joe taught me rule number 1, carefully hide your total incompetence.
We tracked down the tech company insiders once responsible for managing this minefield. And they believe social media disinformation is tearing at the very heart of American democracy.
My name is Edward Perez. Most people call me Eddie. I used to be the Director of Product Management for Information Integrity at Twitter. I don't think it's an exaggeration at all to say that this is potentially the most important election in the US, certainly since our Civil War last century. It's a feeling like you are in a car hurtling toward a brick wall or some danger that you know is coming, and there's not a lot that can be done to stop it.
At Twitter, Eddie Perez led the team tasked with tackling false information on politics and public health and monitoring extremism. He left in 2022, just before Elon Musk took over and slashed thousands of jobs.
This is now a company that instead of having roughly 8,000 people, it has approximately 2,000, I think. So there's a tremendous amount of institutional knowledge that has been lost. In terms of infrastructure and elections in particular, even the attempt to try to achieve accuracy of information, those standards are now gone. The attempt to balance freedom of speech with quality of information and reduction of harm was a very, very serious part of our mission. And in its place, Twitter today is the most generous thing you can say is a wild, wild west.
They know they do far too little about it.
The concerns about democracy aren't confined to X.
Facebook is a company that is paid for its immense profits with our safety.
Frances Haugen was a product manager at what's now Meta. After the chaos of the 2020 election and its violent aftermath, She leaked thousands of pages of company documents.
So at Facebook, there was one area of the company, civic integrity, that was responsible for trying to make sure that Facebook was a positive force in the world. When they dissolved that team right after the election, less than 30 days after people voted in the United States, I knew that Facebook wasn't going to be able to heal itself on its own.
The woman was talking about the change that's been going on Instagram.
Frances Haugen says social media companies like Meta are taking Elon Musk's lead in slashing staff hired to stop disinformation from being disseminated.
Seeing that you could fire huge numbers of people and not face really any meaningful consequences, Mark Zuckerberg followed and fired 20,000 employees. They closed the only mechanism for transparency that existed for either Facebook or Instagram. During the US election season, there will be no tool available from Facebook to be able to see what's going on the platform, even in a moderate way. So I would say Musk has done a very dangerous thing in terms of establishing a precedent.
Meta told us it now has 40,000 people working in safety and security, more than it did in 2020.
Where is he? Come on up here, Elon.
We had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot. Fight, fight, fight!
One of the things that has most turned Eddie Perez off the platform he once worked for is how X has been politically weaponised by its new owner, Elon Musk. Mr. Musk's posts have become ardently supportive of Donald Trump and sometimes disturbing in tone.
I made a joke, which I realized I deleted, which is like, nobody's even bothering to try to kill Kamala because it's pointless. What do you achieve? Nothing.
No, it's totally
Just find
right.
another puppet.
Elon Musk, thank you very much.
Would the posts of Elon Musk violate the sort of rules that you and your colleagues were putting in place?
Certainly some of them definitely would. It disturbs me the most because, to me, what it is actually illustrating are the really, really pernicious ends that come with tremendous wealth and with tremendous power and with influence, and when it is paired with absolute recklessness. X has a very harmful place in the current media ecosystem, whether people are actively participating in it or not. The ripple effects from that will be felt.
Unverified claims about Haitian immigrants killing and eating people's pets.
Eddie Perez says one of the most powerful illustrations of this was the false claim whipped up on social media, posted by Elon Musk, that migrants in Springfield, Ohio were eating pets.
See, I'm a different kind
A false claim that was repeated in the presidential debate by Republican candidate Donald Trump.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets. They're eating the dogs. They're eating.
It flooded social media with AI-generated Trump cat memes.
Eat the cat. Eat the cat. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs.
I mean, it would be laughable if it weren't so harmful.
Talk about extreme.
X is fundamentally operating like a amplifier and disinformation machine, almost like a factory, for these inflammatory right-wing messages. The bottom line here is that there is very real human harm. What happened to that small town of Ohio was terrible. They ended up with bomb threats. They ended up having to evacuate schools. It was absolute chaos for those poor people that, frankly, were used as political pawns.
I think absolutely the United States has gone backwards in its response to disinformation.
The U.S. Department of Homeland Security recently tried to create an advisory board, what it called a Disinformation Governance Board, but that board quickly collapsed.
In 2022, Nina Jankovic was appointed Executive Director of a new Disinformation Governance Board. But this government attempt to rein in the lies on social media was a disastrously short-lived experiment.
So today, to herald the coming of the new Soviet America, the administration announced its own Ministry of Truth.
Right-wing influencers started calling it a Ministry of Truth. And within 24 hours, the board and I were the subject of many Fox News panels and reports saying that I was going to be censoring Americans. Tucker Carlson said that I would have the power to send men with guns to the homes of Americans with whom I disagreed, which absolutely was not true.
This lady is clearly totally unfit for the task.
We talking about the Ministry of Truth here? We talking about Orwell's 1984? Because it sounds an awful like that to me.
Flooded with threats and the most toxic of online hate,
She's wildly inadequate for the...
Nina Jankovic resigned from her position after 3 weeks.
No, nada, nunca.
The worst part was that they went after me and my family. It led people to dox me, so to release my home address and phone number and that of my close family, to threaten me credibly. I, had to consult with the Federal Protective Service. And at the time I was pregnant. I was just a couple weeks away from becoming a mom, and they were threatening me and my unborn child.
In America, children are now at the centre of the battle against big tech. American lawmakers, educators and parents are fighting back against the social media companies with a huge legal case where 37 state attorneys general are joining together with school districts and thousands of families across the country to say that these platforms are causing profound harm to young people. Previn Warren is one of the lawyers running the case against the social media companies. 5 other state attorneys general are running their own cases.
A lot of these parents have lost their kids, and they've lost their kids needlessly through the absolute wanton negligence of these platforms.
Mr. Warren was at Harvard when Mark Zuckerberg launched Facebook and was one of its first users.
What was FaceMash, and is it still up and running?
Facebook's forerunner was a website called FaceMash.
You put up pictures of 2 women and decide which one was the better, more attractive of the 2, is that right?
Congressman, that is an accurate description of the prank website that I made when I was...
That's the origin story of Mr. Zuckerberg's entire empire. And fast forward to where we are now.
And fast forwarding to where we are now, what is the impact on teenage girls?
Its algorithm is designed to push content at young girls that they will find engaging, and it sucks them down a rabbit hole of dieting tips, beauty content. We should not be living in a society where young women are made to feel by powerful, rich tech companies that they're not good enough.
Many of Previn Warren's clients are parents of teenage users of these platforms who allege social media contributed to their children's deaths.
I don't think Instagram wants to kill kids. I think Instagram wants to make a ton of money, and they don't care if they happen to kill some kids along the way.
And what does that say about the people running that organisation?
I think they don't care. I think at the end of the day, they think that they're above the law. And if they don't have to change their design in a way that maximizes safety, they won't. They will put their profits first. That is an incredibly dangerous thing for our society.
We went to a tiny town in rural Colorado to hear just how dangerous it can be. It's corn harvest time in Merino. Population 281. One of the young people from this town is not here to tell her story. But her mother, Louise Schott, wants the world to know it. Her name was Annalee Schott. Everyone called her Anna.
She was an adorable little country girl. She was about 5 foot tall. She weighed 100 pounds. She was my shadow all growing up.
Louise Schott is one of the thousands of parents across America suing the social media companies.
Why are you speaking out, Laurie?
Sorry. I've never felt such a passion to make a wrong a right. Losing our daughter at the age of 18, knowing that it was preventable, I had a choice, either to curl up in my own sorrow and pity, or after what I found out about social media, to share Anna's story, to be her voice.
Anna's best friend was Faith Murphy.
She was kind. Like, undoubtedly kind. Always. Jesus Christ. To anybody and everybody, all the time.
Faith says they would spend about 10 hours a day on Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
Tell me about her use of social media.
It was gnarly. It was bad.
Gnarly. Non-stop. Continuous. She was so desperate to be on those platforms. If you take a phone, she'd find an iPad. Then I tried to figure out if she was on her school computer or her private computer. She would be doing her chores. The phone was in her hand. She would be riding in the arena with her horse. Her phone would be in her pocket. And it was her constant companion. And she said she needed it for schoolwork. Well, I don't think that was what was going on. She needed it because she was on these social media platforms and did not want to give it up.
Because she was addicted.
Because she was addicted to it.
Yeah, I think everyone that at that age is addicted to social media.
Anna's friends and family began to notice that by age 16, she was losing her spark. She was depressed. Social media made it worse. Journal entries show her comparing herself to images she saw online. Writing, "Nobody will love someone as ugly and broken as me."
Like, she would go through phases where she was like, hey, just text me, like, I'm deleting Snapchat, I'm deleting Instagram. And it would last, like, a month max, and then it was re-downloaded. And
why was she wanting to delete these platforms?
Because it was toxic.
If you could see her social media, it destroyed her with constant feeds about how she looked, who she was, anxiety, depression. She wasn't sleeping because, when we let her have her phone, she was constantly on it. I think she was sleeping 4 hours a night. But Instagram fed her the worst content. I feel like it is a heat-detecting missile that finds these weaknesses in these children and just zone in on it. So they knew that Anna's weakness was, a little anxiety or depression. I'm going to a counselor, looking these things up, and it just magnified it. And it did not stop. And as a parent, you say you don't think it's going to happen to you in your family. It does. Those algorithms change so quickly, and no parent can outsmart those algorithms.
TikTok algorithm pushed deeply disturbing videos on Anna's For You feed. It curated content that constantly referenced death and suicide. Louise Schott only discovered this after Anna died. She found a page in Anna's journal headed TikToks with the handwritten words, "Technically, if I kill myself, the problem would be gone."
It brought me to my knees. It crippled me. I mean, to this day, I can't unsee what I saw.
How does that make you feel towards the social media companies?
I think it's disgusting. Fix it. Your algorithms are targeting the mentally unwell and children and worsen all of the shit they're already dealing with.
TikTok says it has strict community guidelines and doesn't allow content depicting extreme violence, self-harm, or promoting eating disorders. To find out what the tech giants knew about the dangers to young people like Annalee Schott, we've travelled here to San Francisco to meet Silicon Valley insiders who were alarmed at what they saw when advising the social media companies on trust and safety.
My name is Arturo Bejar. For me, I mean, the reason I'm here talking with you, right, is this shouldn't be happening. And every parent should know how bad it is.
In October 2021, Arturo Bejar emailed Facebook's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, to warn him of the dangers to young people. He raised internal company research he'd worked on that showed 51% of Instagram's users say yes to having a bad or harmful experience in the last 7 days. More than a quarter of 13 to 15-year-olds surveyed said they'd received unwanted sexual advances. Don't we run the risk of normalising bad behaviour? Mr. Bejar asked his boss. On many of the measures examined by his team, 13 to 15-year-olds were the most likely to encounter dangerous content, including posts about self-harm on Instagram.
And to this day, I mean, it's insane. There's no way for a kid to press a button to let know Instagram that that happened.
Why?
Because they don't want to know.
Why don't they want to know?
Because I think that if they knew, they might think they're liable. I think if they knew, they might feel they have a responsibility to deal with it. I mean, I think that the company cares more about protecting its reputation and the risk of a leak than they do to understand actual harm and reduce it.
You brought your concerns to the highest levels of Meta, right up to Mark Zuckerberg. And what was his response?
He didn't even write back.
Arturo Bejar worked at Facebook for 6 years until 2015. When he returned to the company in 2019, he was horrified to see most of the safety measures to protect young people that his team had put in place had been removed from the platform. He also wrote to the head of Instagram, Adam Mosseri, about his concerns.
And I had my meeting with him, and he understood everything I was talking about. He didn't disagree with any of it.
So that was 2021. What did he do?
Nothing.
How does that make you feel?
Well, that's why I whistleblow, right? How many kids, right? What is his legacy? What is Mark's legacy when it comes to teenagers, right?
What is his legacy?
Eating disorders, teens committing suicide because of bullying and harassment, so much harm to the people that deserve to be protected the most.
They're here. You're on national television.
Mark Zuckerberg testified before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee.
Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
Apologising for the harms his company had caused to young people. Arturo Beher was there with the parents of teenagers who had died.
I think Mark is responsible for what happened to these kids. Because if Mark woke up tomorrow morning and said, we no longer are going to show anything that has remotely to do with self-harm to 13-year-olds, it would take a few months for the company to be able to do that. They have the infrastructure and the capacity to do that. I've seen what the company can do when Mark deems it a priority, and I've seen how hard it is for a company to do something if Mark doesn't deem it a priority. So I think he has such responsibility when it comes to everything we're talking about.
Meta disputes Arturo Beher's assertion that no action was taken. It says it's implemented safety features such as comment warnings and kindness reminders. The company has also introduced teen accounts, which it says provides teens with built-in protections and gives parents more oversight, including seeing who their teens are chatting with and setting time limits. Whistleblowers question whether these measures go far enough.
If you were to choose 3 words that sum up social media, what would they be?
Unnecessarily, tragically harmful.
This tiny community in Colorado is coming to terms with the unnecessary, tragic loss of a country teenager.
She was a beautiful little rider. I still remember her backing into the box. She just loved it. I felt like social media just stripped her confidence. But when she was on a horse with these guys in this environment, she just blossomed.
What's that?
These people were her cheering squad, so it just crippled everybody. And to come back to the arena without her here is hard.
Court documents revealed that in the months before Annalee Schott's death, Mark Zuckerberg was warned by his own staff that photo filters used in Instagram were actively encouraging young girls into body dysmorphia. Mr. Zuckerberg dismissed the concerns as paternalistic.
They knew what was happening. If you follow my daughter's journals, 2019, she was harmed for the exact same things they warned Mr. Zuckerberg about. And they knew it. How could this happen and they're not accountable to this day? It hurts me every single day because my daughter would be alive. I really think she'd be alive today. Sorry. If he would have taken action.
How do you feel towards Mark Zuckerberg in light of this?
He's responsible. I want him held accountable. So he needs to be held legally liable for what's happened to these children. And that's a hill I'm willing to die on if I have to tell Anna's story 10,000 times, because he had the ability to stop it, change it, make it for the good of the kids. Let's make this a better place. Let's get to a better yes. You can have your billions of dollars, I guess, but trying to improve it was not on his agenda, and he's going to have to live with that for the rest of his life. He does. He has blood on his hands.
Meta says when all the evidence comes out, it will demonstrate that neither the company nor any of its executives will have any liability. And it has strict rules against content that's graphic or glorifies suicide or self-harm. Annalee Schott died by suicide in her own home. She's buried on the family ranch.
It is like a slow drip of pain. That it has totally altered our family. But I want some good to come out of this.
Each day, as the light fades across these plains, Laurie Schott looks out to see Anna's memorial cross light up.
You know, for us, it's not about the money. We just want our daughter back. But if the lawsuits make social media stand up and take responsibility and change, that's where I'm pushing. Make the world a better place, Mark Zuckerberg. Make the world a better place, TikTok. Every harm, every single harm, I can see a child's face. You know, we let a stranger into our house every night that does the most horrific things and can manipulate a child's mind to that extent that we need to say enough is enough.
If this program has raised concerns for you, you can contact one of these services.